Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Bohn. You mentioned Supervisor Madrone. Supervisor Madrone, I haven't seen your hand up. Would you like to comment, please? And then I think we might take a break. Welcome. Welcome. Thank you, Steve.
Thank you. Let's see if this is on. Yep. Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the public, the board, and all the department heads at sea, which I guess sounds like we might be if we don't fix things up here. You know, I want to start out first by recognizing that we're all under tremendous stress. Everybody. This is just incredible what's going on right now for our planet, for our communities, and not just COVID. There are many stressors out there that are affecting all of us. There's no doubt about that. So I just want to acknowledge that, because out of those kinds of conditions, people can feel like they're being cornered and then start, pushing back. I appreciate that there's comments and sentiments being said that there is no vendetta, there's no nobody's out to try and, make somebody look bad, blah, blah, blah. But words are words and actions are actions. And there have been many actions that suggest otherwise. The way this agenda item was even crafted, it really does lend itself to the feeling of this attempt to try and blame the Auditor-Controller's office for all of these problems. It talks about concrete steps to protect the county's fiscal operations, financial condition, and reputation arising from the operational gaps by the Auditor-Controller's office. It would have been nice if that agenda item said something like fiscal operations and financial condition arising from the operational gaps in the county's financial accounting systems. That would be more reflective of what's actually going on in the county. As has been identified by many people, there were some pretty lax accounting procedures that had developed in this county long before Karen Paz Dominguez took this job. And that's been documented by the conversations here today, as well as many other statements and facts that have been presented. So, again, it would be really nice if we're coming together to try and resolve conflict, which is what I believe is the intention. If I drill down into the human intention that I think all of us here today have, it's to try and resolve conflict. To resolve conflict and to do our jobs and find a way to make sure we keep the county whole and take care of our bills and our processes and all those kinds of things. So I know that's what we're here for. But when you start out by labeling the agenda item the way you did, it makes it not seem that way. It makes it seem like everybody's trying to focus in on just the problems with the Auditor-Controller's office. I like the statement that was in the letter from the employees at the Auditor-Controller's office. In particular, there was one statement in there that I thought was really quite good. And it said, there have been several factors that have led to the problems laid out in the agenda item, including general county mismanagement, departmental delays in providing requested clarification, and inability to provide required substantiating documentation. I know that to be true because I have delved into this issue pretty deeply and into some specific issues that deal with my district and other things. And I know that to be true. I know that we all have some responsibility in this conflict. As a board member, I know that I have a responsibility to try and follow up on our board finalizing the staffing requests that were made to us many, many times over the last 2 years, including a month or so ago where we approved one position, the executive secretary, and then we directed HR staff and the Auditor-Controller to work on position descriptions and qualifications for the other two positions of the three that were requested of us. And before we left that agenda item, I raised a concern that I thought we should be hiring those positions, but right at that moment at the meeting. But I understood that it would be good to identify qualifications for those positions so that we could increase the qualifications of individuals working in the AC office, which is not in any way to be derogatory of those that already work there, because I know for a fact that they all work extremely hard and are putting in massive hours to try and deal with this workload. So as a board member, I feel a responsibility to follow through on that commitment. And the response I got from the board last month was, oh, absolutely. We're just trying to define the positions and we'll bring it back for a supplemental budget request and then we'll deal with that then. I recognize that wasn't a vote to approve the supplemental budget request, but that was the action we took. So, you know, when I'm in conflict, I usually try to look at myself first and understand what can I do? You know, what are the requirements and responsibilities that I have to try and move this forward? And so I'm not going to spend any time here trying to lay blame on anybody, even though I think that there's been lots of efforts to try and discredit individuals and to be really mean from the very beginning on many levels. And I also think that it's true what John Bartholomew said, that it's really not the best place to try and solve these problems in social media or on Facebook or in the media. But, you know, if I was backed into a corner and it felt to me like a certain number of people were against me and had a vendetta from day one, I think I'd probably feel pretty reactionary and pretty defensive, frankly, when that just continues to happen over and over again. So again, we need to each look at our own actions and ask ourselves, are the comments we're making or the actions we're taking helping to resolve this conflict or to perpetuate it? We spent over $350,000 on MGO to tell us what we already basically knew, you know, and I do think that maybe one of the things that's become really clear here today, and I hope it is clear for everybody, is that postings, you know, one of the most critical things that we're discussing here today is these postings that have timelines on them and deadlines. And if we don't do these things, there's all kinds of ramifications. I have heard, and I have been involved in invoicing and accounting myself in my life. I'm certainly not an accountant, but I have dealt with hundreds and hundreds of grants with the federal and state government. I understand these processes of overhead charges and documentation and all these kinds of things. It is clear to me that one can post using estimates, using your best judgment at the time, based on all the information that you have. You can do that, as long as you later then justify and adjust as necessary in the next quarter, the end of the year, wherever that might occur. One has to be sure that you ultimately use actuals to then ultimately justify what you billed for and what happened. I understand all that. So I guess, you know, my recommendation is that we get these postings done. And I realize that there are lots of questions at the office about these things, that they feel that there has not been enough supplemental information submitted to justify all of these things. I understand all of that, but we're not in a position right now where we can get to 100%. And people have said this before, you know, we don't chase the pennies, we chase the dollar. You know, you're never going to get down to the penny. You never are. It's going to be down to the dollar or whatever it might be. And I know you guys in the auditor's office understand all of that. I do know that departments have had lots of problems that have created compounding problems for the Auditor-Controller's office. I mean, as a board member, I see contracts coming by me all the time that are 4 months, 6 months after the contract started. And so they're operating on a handshake or some sort of a gentle person's agreement of some kind or whatever. And then 6, 7 months later, we're finally approving the contract. And I'm told, well, that's because the state is really, you know, late on processing these, et cetera. But I know for a fact that it's not just the state, it's also internally within our departments. We're not doing our jobs across the departments. And it's not that people aren't working hard. It's that things are complicated and we're all under stress and it's just crazy making time right now. So let's all take a deep breath and try to figure out what are the solutions here and not try to blame people. There is plenty of responsibility, not blame, but responsibility to go around. The departments need to get more timely with their contracts, with their invoicing. They need to submit better documentation with those so that it is an easy process. The Auditor-Controller, if they have not done it, I think they've done it to a large degree, but we need to pin down specifically what sorts of documentation is necessary to get things approved at the department level, to get things approved with the ISFs and the other batch of postings. But we can do this, you know, if we stop trying to blame each other and we actually work on those lists and get those things finalized so we're in agreement. And these things were in the MGO report that we paid over $350,000 for. You know, we need to have those things written down, clearly identified, etc. But I'm not interested in a staffing study. I want to provide staffing. We've been asked over and over again. And frankly, you know, comparing numbers between one year to another isn't really what's going on. What's going on is that there was an extremely lax process in the Auditor-Controller's office that had allowed departments to get into very lax processes with the way they were submitting their paperwork, and everybody was joyfully moving forward, paying everything, but the liabilities were growing and increasing, and we weren't being very accountable, and findings had already been made long before this Auditor-Controller came on board. So, you know, let's stop with the blame game. There is a lot of room to improve procedures in departments, as well as the CAO's office, as well as us at the Board of Supervisors. And in order to get all this work done, what we're looking at here is this massive backlog of improper procedures. So you don't suddenly clean all that kind of stuff up and get everybody trained into the new procedures that are more accountable, that everybody can work well on and get bills paid timely and postings timely. You don't just do that by getting back to the same level of staff you had before. You've got a backlog. You've got to clean up that backlog. And it's not MGO I want doing this. I want county staff. I want local county of Humboldt people being hired and trained so that we are building our institutional capacity to take on this work and continue it. And if it turns out in a year or two, we've gotten all this stuff caught up, everything posted, people are trained and we're running like a smooth machine again, then maybe we can dial back on some of that staffing. But we're not in that position right now. You know, it's high time we provide the staffing that's been requested, get the work done, get things posted. And that's the part I am saying to the Auditor-Controller, post this stuff. I recognize it's just estimates, but it's estimates made by professionals who are making their best judgment call on where we're at this current time. We've got to post this stuff. We've got to close these books. We've got to move forward, but I am committed to offering you staffing. Obviously, I'm only one vote, but I want to get us out of this. I'm tired of this stuff and this conflict. I know we all are. So that's what I would like to see. You know, this is Thanksgiving week, right? I mean, where's our Thanksgiving spirit? You know, I would be so thankful if we would stop blaming and take on personal responsibility across the board, like I've said, and start moving with staffing and making things happen. If we do that today, I will leave here so thankful that we can move forward and start actually trying to process this paperwork and make things happen. Thank you for letting me speak for a fairly lengthy time. But, you know, I hadn't spoke at all. And I guess still, if you would add up the time of other individuals, I'm still probably less minutes than others have spoken on this issue. So I don't mean to hold back on my comments to the end to somehow be strategizing or thinking. You know, I'm just trying to be a listener. I'm really trying hard to listen and study the issues and understand where everybody's coming from and offer my best suggestions for how we resolve conflict, get our work done, be thankful for the incredible community we live in and the great staff we have in this county. Let's do this. Let's move forward. Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the board.
Thank you, Supervisor Madrone. And you can talk as long as you want, because this is what this meeting is all about, is an airing out and hopefully finding a resolution, and appreciate your passion.